to my Awakening podcast, episode 2 today, and the title is going to be a little strange. It's called, I Got Hit by a Car, Again, Twice in the Last 3 months. What? Wonder what that's all about. Now, before we get into the seemingly ridiculous topic today, I just hope that you can like, subscribe, favorite, or follow this podcast. And please, as usual, by all means, share it with someone that you know that could possibly benefit from it, because it may be the catalyst to changing their lives. So how can me getting hit by another car just 3 months after I was hit by the first car be something for my awakening? I think that's a damn good question. I'm going to do my best to walk you through it. Now, it might seem like I'm being told something by someone or something that I'm getting in the way. Better yet, maybe I'm getting in my own way, right? It may also be like some crazy request I put out to the universe that is actually being answered, like, Bear, we heard you were sending out messages requesting a little change in your foundation so we can test how strong your convictions are with God. So the first hit will be to tear your meniscus, so you can see how you may need to build or rebuild your faith in God from the ground up. The second hit is to refresh your memory on just how hard it is to rebuild your foundation. You know, either way, I'm sitting here just hours after the second hit, contemplating the depth of these two intense moments, and just shaking my head. I'm in the process of rehabbing my torn meniscus from the first accident, and I was progressing quite well. At least until today, when this driver intentionally hit me. And you heard me right, folks. It was intentional. And I have it on video. But it wasn't that bad. And trust me, I ought to know. This is my second time in 3 months. Now, don't get in a tizzy here, because there's going to be some deeper lessons to be learned, and we're going to go through it together next. Now, you could argue that calling the police was in order. Truth was, I'd already done that before this man showed up with his truck. You could also argue that I could sue him for trying to run me over, which he tested that theory until I think he figured out I wasn't moving. You could also ask yourselves, why the heck was I in his way to begin with? And that is how the experience begins. So this is how it all started, guys. I was driving home down our long dirt road when I saw this car in the opposite side of the road with its left front tire completely off the road and heading down the cliff. And the back passenger tire was in the air as this whole car was hanging on the edge. Our road has got a history of having issues like this because it's a windy dirt road and not maintained well at all. And yes, believe it or not, it's actually posted as such a road at the beginning of the road. I immediately stopped my car and put my hazards on just in case, right? I don't want anyone to kind of be zipping by because this car's, hanging out halfway in the road. I walk up and inspect the car from a distance. I look through the windows and find the keys in the ignition. There's a wallet in the center console with money sticking out of it. There's children's sneakers, children's clothes. There's stuff all over the place. And the doors, by looking, appeared to be unlocked. So right now, I'm sure you're all running scenarios through your heads, just like I was. So I came up with as ugly thoughts as I could. Child abduction was probably the ugliest way I could go, right? So then I called 911. They transferred me to the local sheriff's office, where I told them everything I saw, where I was, including my latitude and longitude. I told the dispatcher that I would stay until the sheriff showed up, because apparently this must have just happened. As I waited for, well over an hour or so for the police, 4 cars actually drove by wanting to pass and to do what they wanted to do. In other words, go down to the creek. I told them of the scenario, and they were nice enough to turn around. Then there came this truck. I could see the man driving it as he's coming down, and he's driving right down in the middle of the lane. And, I yelled out to him, told him to stop, and I wanted to tell him the situation. Folks, as I mentioned before, the inside of the car already had me thinking that something bad may have occurred here, and that going near it, touching it, or opening doors could be really bad for the police to do their investigative work, and possibly forensics if anything insanely bad were to happen. I was hoping it wouldn't be any of those situations. However, this man starts yelling out his window at me and said that it was his car. Right away, because of my earlier thoughts, I wasn't sure I could trust this guy, so I asked him to stay in his car until the police arrived. He used some pretty ugly words and told me he didn't give a bleep. I asked him again to stay in his car until the police arrived. He then yells at me again, get out of his way. I held up my hand in the stop position, but he didn't stop. I yelled at him to not hit me with his truck. He continued to come at me. Having the thoughts of a possible abduction scenario with that car, I believed I needed to make a stand until the police arrived. I felt it was in the best interest because I didn't know. Hindsight would tell you that it may not have been the best idea and that maybe I could have done something else. But everybody in that moment, after I saw the situation in that car, and this guy has got a really bad attitude, I do what I believe is right. So I stood my ground. He continued to come at me, and he hit me with his car. I was actually prepared for it, so I was as soft on my feet as I could be, considering I was rehabbing my torn meniscus. And of all the places that he hit me, he hit my rehabbing knee. The only good thing is that I had the wherewithal to have my cell phone at the ready, and I was capturing it on video. Now, again, you all may be putting this picture together and already have the answers, and I get it. But one more time, there are some deeper lessons for us to learn with this. So this guy may have finally realized that he might have gone a little bit too far by hitting me while being recorded on video. So he stops his truck and he starts to get out. He starts cursing, telling me that it was his car and that his wife was the driver and that he was in the military and he could care less about the police and he was just going to do what he wanted to do. He started coming towards me. So I had to do what I thought was best. I stood up tall to him. I believed that I needed to show him I was prepared to do what it took to ensure nothing was touched until the police came. Once again, let's not be judging the situation as I've put it to you, because sometimes it's not what we think. Let's turn the clock back a bit and let's look at things from a different perspective. Kind of a perspective that has God intervening for me. Digging deeper than what we see right now, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself that's going to give you more insight to how this situation could have gone way worse than it did. Hang tight. Through my childhood and well into my 20s and 30s, I used to solve any conflict with stronger conflict. I'm a big dude, I have a big booming voice, so for me it was a show of strength and power. If you've heard any of my podcasts before, any of my Path to Recovery or the Cognitive Awareness podcast, you'd know by now that I had a history of being a violent person. I used brute force to get things done my way. I've hurt many people with my hands, and I believed I was good at it. However, folks, somewhere over 20 years ago, I chose the path to recovery, which allowed me to focus on the deeper reasons why I was like that. And yes, as usual, it all started during my childhood. I'll make this short and sweet because I've got more things to talk about than this. I was disciplined with a hardwood paddle, and I was beat up a lot by my siblings. So not having a skill set to learn how to cope with that pain and understanding why I was being beat up, I had to do what I only knew. I chose to do unto others as I would have done to me, and lots of people were hurt by my hands. So let's forward the clock to today, and as this man was coming at me with his truck, I began to recognize my body returning to its old ways. I felt that fear and the need to protect myself was coming. My body was tensing up. I started leaning forward and puffing up into a more defensive posture. I was preparing for battle. Remember, I said I began to recognize my patterns, which means clearly that I was aware that something was brewing. But I also had my cognitive awareness to assess the situation, and I did my best to avoid a physical conflict at all costs, while I was also trying to preserve the wellness of both he and I, and of course to preserve a possible crime scene with that car that was hanging over the edge. I found myself seeking a higher power to assist me as the man came at me with his truck. I started asking God to be with me for this, no matter how it turned out, to guide me, because I believed I was right. After he got out of his car and headed my way, and my body was ready to defend itself, I found I was asking God to be with me and to guide me towards preventing any battle. I saw this man who may actually be the owner of the car, but in his showing of anger and attacking me, kind of proved to me that I may have to defend myself. But it was as if I started seeing him as all of those people I fought when I was younger. As if those memories of anger and hate were coming back to me in order for me to do what I needed to do to defend myself and the possible evidence of an abducted child from a car. Or at least that's what my mind was expressing. Now, I knew I had the skill to make it happen. I knew I'd come out on top if need be. because I was prepared to. And that, right there, is what scared me the most. The fact that I could switch it on scared the hell out of me. When that moment of understanding hit me, my body started shaking. It was pouring in all of those emotions all at once. I recognized that full body shake all too well. My mind started spinning with the possibilities, approaches that I would take, the attacks that I would do, as if it were going to take place. But my heart kept jumping in to let me know that God was with me. So I began this kind of internal battle, kind of like having the little devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. The angel saying, God, please guide me to do the right thing. And the devil saying, Bear, be ready if you need it. God, I don't want this. Bear, you can handle this. God, help me find another way. Bear, you may have to use all your skills and cause this man great harm. So just imagine, if you will, how my body was shaking from all of that and trying to do the right thing. The God in me was pulling me to safety as the egoic devil character in me was ready to fight. How would you have handled it? What emotions would you have had? Could you just walk away from the whole thing regardless of what might be the truth? All the things that I saw in the car were telling me something. The man's behavior was telling me something. And all of it meant human, protect, and cause harm. But when my moment of truth, and that's the truth with a capital T, when my moment of truth hit me, it became an easy call. I broke free of the hate and anger, and I went to God. I asked this man again to stop and wait for the police. He chose not to by throwing more aggressive words at me as he headed for the car. So I quietly chose to start recording the video, and I told him I was. He then threw out more curse words at me. He opened the door, grabbed something, and then he came back to me. He showed me the registration of the car and his ID, and damn it if they didn't match. He then headed back to his truck to get the chain to pull it out. I asked him again to wait for the police. He ignored me. I then asked him, you know what, dude, just please call them. Let them know you're going to do this because they're on their way. After a couple of minutes of struggling with his cell phone, he finally contacted them. He explained everything through his perspective, of course. He explained what the situation was, and he told them that a quote-unquote civilian was trying to prevent me from getting my car. And I could hear the police because he had him on speakerphone, and they said, don't worry about it. And they let him pull the car out. I was taken back tremendously by the response of the police, considering they hadn't even arrived on scene to assess any of the situation. My faith in them appeared to be crushed when I heard the response they gave to that man. So I had to go where I knew my faith wouldn't be denied. It was at that moment I took a deep breath and I felt God working through me. So I asked this angry, hateful man that was cursing at me word after word, and who took steps to show me he wanted trouble, who hit me with his car. I asked him a simple question. Can I help? He looked at me and he paused. And then he said, yeah, that would be great. It was like the hand of God came down and touched us both at the same time and ensured us that we were done using our emotions to solve the situation, and it was time to use our hearts. So together, through a lot of struggles and a lot of physical effort, we were able to pull the car out of danger. It got really scary because at one point in time, he had to stop backing up with his truck, but his truck shaked forward, which meant the car shook forward, and it almost took me and the car down over the bank. But we succeeded. We then began to talk a little bit about the military. As he had said in the beginning, he was part of the military, and since I was, it gave us some common ground to talk and communicate. We then shared a few stories while we waited for the police to arrive. Then when they did, we talked to the officers. We let them know we kind of figured out a real neat way of pulling the car out together and that everything was okay. The police got his ID and filed their report, and then they left. No, I didn't tell them about him hitting me with a car or the crazy amounts of swearing that he threw my way. I didn't tell them that he said he could care less about the police and that he was going to just do whatever he wanted to do. Now, I'm sure you're asking why? Well, could I have? Yeah, absolutely. Was I in the right to do so and maybe file charges against this man? Absolutely. Could I have pressed charges for assault with a deadly weapon? 100%, guys. Could have easily been done. So here's how it hit me. This is the deal, folks. Both the car and the truck that he was driving were not in great shape. I'm guessing they really weren't in a great financial place. So I could easily have been him many times in my life. I could see that. This guy was off his rocker, upset at his wife, I'm sure. From what I saw, this didn't look like she just accidentally lost control. And somebody that accidentally lost control certainly wouldn't leave the car with the keys in the ignition and their wallet and money all over the place. Now, this man was off his rocker, but I can tell you he said very little about his wife other than she was the one driving, as if he wasn't that concerned that she left her wallet and cash and keys all in the front seat. Did he apologize for being off his rocker? Yes, he did. Finally, after our talks and after the police left, I gave him a hug. I asked him actually forgive me for being that guy blocking you from a horrible enough day, and to finally be that guy to help you solve your problem. I felt his struggle. Now, does that make his actions right? No, not even close. But I forgave him for his struggle and how he showed me his anger, because in truth, folks, I saw me in him. And I had to work extra hard to forgive myself for almost going down the path to darkness. Even though I was pushed aggressively to be there, I needed to see where that line actually is, and to know I can prevent it from coming up again. And I know I'm walking with God, especially through the hardest times like this. And to appreciate everything I did to stay away from making a bad situation way worse than it was. Somebody could have gotten very hurt. So I got hit by a car again, and I learned some very valuable lessons about me. I have a long way to go, but damn if it isn't looking so much better. I am on the right path, the righteous path. I'm a good-hearted human, and I will stand up for the little guy or the little gal. I have some healing to do regarding my ability to still have a skill set of physical violence. Even though the right intention may be around it, it's never going to be the answer. So I'll refresh my skills of self-defense rather than keeping my skills of self-offense. Now, I was asked by a dear friend soon after this whole situation occurred. He asked me, if the same situation arose tomorrow, would you do the same thing? I didn't even hesitate. I said yes, absolutely. I'd help. That's the right thing to do. I have no hesitation when I see someone in need. If I can help, I will help. If I can emotionally afford to, then I will. However, I would have more focus on God than my human self if this happened again. That is one of the greatest lessons for me. Oh, one last thing. Take it from me. Try not getting hit by a car. It really sucks. Folks, thank you very much for listening in and walking down my day with me, seeing these lessons, noticing our own judgments when situation was presented to us, as I did. The human. It's all about the human. Go to God and you can't go wrong. Thank you very much for listening in. Thank you for being a part of my life. Thank you for sharing this and for caring and for listening. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Talk to you soon.